A nurse saved a man stranded in the snowstorm, not knowing he was a millionaire who would change her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The snowstorm was one of the worst the town had seen in years. Winds howled through the empty highway, whipping sharp flakes of snow against the windshield of an old sedan, making its way slowly through the night. Inside, Emily, a young nurse who had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital, tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her eyes stung from exhaustion, but her instincts kept her alert. She knew nights like these were dangerous. A single wrong turn, a patch of black ice, and it could be the end. As her headlights cut through the wall of white, something flickered on the side of the road. At first, Emily thought it was a snowbank, but then she saw it, the silhouette of a luxury car, its headlights dim, steam hissing faintly from under the hood. She slowed down, heart racing. Who would be stranded out here in the middle of nowhere, with temperatures plummeting below zero? She debated for a split second. The storm was bad, and stopping could be risky, but her conscience left her no choice. Emily pulled over, the crunch of her tires swallowed by the storm, and hurried through the freezing wind toward the vehicle. Inside, she found a man slumped against the driver's seat. His coat was half open, his face pale, lips tinged with blue. He looked barely conscious. Emily's training took over. She yanked open the door, ignoring the blast of icy air, and pressed her fingers to his neck. His pulse was weak but steady. Relief flooded her, but she knew he would not last long out here. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted over the storm. His eyelids fluttered, and he whispered something, but the words were lost in the wind. Emily tugged her scarf from her neck and wrapped it around him, then leaned in closer. His breath fogged the air between them, shallow and uneven. She tried again, her voice firmer, like she was speaking to one of her patients. "Stay with me. You are going to be all right." But as she pulled him out of the car, she realized how heavy he was, how his body sagged against hers. He was not just exhausted, he was slipping away. Emily's heart pounded. She had only minutes to get him to safety. Half dragging, half supporting him, she struggled through the snow back toward her sedan. Her own body shivered violently, but she refused to stop. The storm roared in her ears, drowning out everything but the sound of her own determination. This was not just about saving a stranger. This was about holding on to her oath, her belief that no life should ever be abandoned. Finally, with one last burst of strength, she eased him into the passenger seat of her car. His head lolled against the headrest, his eyes half shut, but there was a faint spark of awareness in them. Emily leaned closer, brushing the snow from his hair, and whispered, "You are safe now. I have got you." The engine roared back to life, and Emily steered her way through the storm, headlights slicing into the dark, determined to reach the hospital before it was too late. What she did not know was that the man she had just saved was no ordinary traveler caught in the storm. He was a millionaire, a man whose life would soon become entangled with hers in ways she could never have imagined. Emily's sedan slid into the hospital parking lot, tires squealing against the icy pavement. The storm still raged outside, but she barely noticed it anymore. Every second mattered. She jumped out, hurried around the car, and pulled open the passenger door. The man was still breathing, but his skin was clammy, his pulse faint. She waved frantically toward the entrance. "I need help over here." Two orderlies rushed out with a stretcher, their coats flapping wildly in the wind. Together, they lifted him carefully and rolled him through the sliding glass doors into the warmth of the emergency room. Emily followed, snow still clinging to her hair, her heart pounding. Inside, the medical team went to work. They cut away his damp clothing, checked his vitals, and hooked him up to oxygen. Emily stood close, her hands trembling. She had seen patients before, but something about this man unsettled her. His face, even pale and weak, carried a certain weight. He was not an ordinary person, but she pushed the thought aside. To her, right now, He was simply a patient in need. Hours passed in a blur. Emily assisted quietly, fetching supplies, checking the monitors, adjusting the blanket around him. Finally, his breathing steadied. The lines on the machines turned stable. Relief washed over her, leaving her drained but grateful. When the chaos subsided, Emily found herself sitting beside his bed in the dimly lit recovery room. His eyes fluttered open for the first time, and she leaned closer. "You are safe. You made it." His lips moved, forming a weak whisper. "Thank you, nurse." His voice cracked, barely audible, but the gratitude in his tone was undeniable. Emily smiled softly. "Do not thank me yet. You had hypothermia. If we had been just a few minutes later." She trailed off, unwilling to finish the sentence. He studied her face for a long moment, as though trying to memorize it. Then he closed his eyes again, exhaustion dragging him back under. The doctor entered, glancing at the chart. "He should be fine with rest. We will keep him here for observation. But the strange thing is," the doctor frowned, "he had no identification. No wallet, no phone, nothing. Just his clothes and his watch. And that watch looks expensive." Emily turned to look at the man again. Even in sleep, there was something commanding about his presence. The kind of aura that did not belong to someone ordinary. "Maybe he was robbed," she suggested. "Perhaps," the doctor replied, unconvinced. "Or maybe he is hiding something." Later that night, as the hospital grew quiet and the storm outside began to ease, Emily returned to check on him one last time. She tucked the blanket tighter around his shoulders, then paused. His hand twitched, reaching weakly toward her. "Do not leave," he murmured in his sleep. Emily froze, her chest tightening. She whispered back, though she knew he could not hear her. "I am not leaving. Rest now." She turned off the light and stepped out into the hall, unaware that this single act of kindness would change the entire course of her life. Because the man lying in that hospital bed was not just a stranger she had rescued from the storm. He was a millionaire, a man whose secrets were hidden beneath layers of silence. And soon, Emily would discover that saving his life was only the beginning of a story far bigger than she could ever imagine. The storm passed overnight, leaving the town buried beneath a thick blanket of snow. Roads were blocked, schools were closed. But inside the hospital, life slowly returned to routine. Emily walked her rounds, her thoughts still drifting back to the stranger she had brought in from the storm. By morning, his color had returned, and the strength in his voice surprised her. The doctor signed his release papers after confirming he was stable enough to leave. Emily helped gather his few belongings, a coat, his shoes, and the elegant wristwatch that had drawn curious glances from the staff. When it was time to say goodbye, he stood at the hospital doors, leaning slightly on the railing. His gaze lingered on her. "You saved my life," he said quietly. Emily smiled, brushing snowflakes from her sleeve. "It was my job. Anyone would have done the same." But he shook his head. "No, not everyone would have stopped on a highway in the middle of a snowstorm. You did." She felt her cheeks warm under his stare. "Just take care of yourself, all right? Rest, drink plenty of water, and do not try to be a hero in another snowstorm." A faint laugh escaped his lips. He hesitated as if wanting to say more, but instead he nodded, pulling his coat tighter. "Goodbye, Nurse Emily." The automatic doors slid shut, and she watched him disappear into the world outside. Something about the way he said her name made her chest tighten. She told herself it was nothing, just a patient. Just another life she had crossed paths with. Days later, Emily's routine resumed. Long shifts, patients who tested her patience, brief snatches of rest at home before the cycle began again. One Saturday afternoon, with a rare few hours free, she went to the small grocery store near her apartment. She pushed her cart slowly down the aisle, mentally calculating her budget. Bread, milk, a few vegetables, a pack of coffee, necessities only. As she reached for a carton of eggs, a voice spoke behind her. "Do you always work this hard, even on your days off?" Emily spun around. Standing there, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, was the man from the hospital. He looked healthier now, his color back, his eyes brighter. For a moment, she just stared, unable to hide her surprise. "You?" she said finally. "What are you doing here?" He shrugged lightly, holding a basket with only a few items. "I needed some groceries, and maybe I wanted to see if fate would let me run into my rescuer again." Her lips twitched into a reluctant smile. "This is not fate. It is the only grocery store in town." "Then I suppose I am lucky it is yours too." "Oh." They walked together through the aisles, their conversation light but strangely comfortable. He asked about her shifts, about her patience, about the life of someone who gave so much without asking for anything in return. Emily noticed the way he listened, really listened, as if her words carried weight. Most people never asked about her long hours or her small apartment, but he did. At the checkout, as she fumbled for coupons, he quietly slipped a carton of coffee into her bag. She caught him and frowned. "Hey, you cannot just—" "Consider it a thank you," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." Emily wanted to argue, but something in his eyes stopped her. She sighed, letting it go. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, softer this time, like delicate flakes of silver. As they parted ways in the parking lot, Emily waved half-heartedly. "Take care of yourself. Do not make me rescue you twice." "Oh," he grinned, a warmth in his expression that lingered with her long after he walked away. What Emily did not know was that this man was not just another face she happened to save. He had returned for a reason. And though he still kept his identity hidden, their paths had only just begun to intertwine. The following week, Emily was once again caught in her endless cycle of work. Early mornings, late nights, and the quiet in-between moments when fatigue made her bones ache. Yet, every so often, she caught herself thinking about the stranger she had pulled from the snow. She told herself it was only natural. After all, she had nearly watched him die in her arms. But deep down, there was something more. One evening, as she left the hospital, bundled in her worn winter coat, she found him waiting outside. He leaned casually against the railing, snowflakes dusting his shoulders. When their eyes met, his lips curved into a small smile. "You again," Emily said, her voice half amused, half cautious. "I told you, I am not going to let fate do all the work," he replied. "Can I walk you home?" She hesitated for a moment before nodding. The streets were quiet, lined with lampposts that glowed softly against the fresh snow. They walked side by side, their breaths forming little clouds in the air. "So," Emily asked, "are you always this mysterious? No last name? No explanation? Just showing up whenever you feel like it?" He chuckled, brushing snow from his sleeve. "Maybe I am just enjoying the chance to spend time with the woman who saved me." Emily rolled her eyes, but the warmth in her chest betrayed her. "Well, do not expect me to keep rescuing you. Once was enough." As they walked, their conversation deepened. He asked about her childhood, her dream of becoming a nurse, and the sacrifices she had made to get there. Emily found herself opening up in ways she rarely did. She told him about her father, working 2 jobs, about her mother's illness, about the reason she had chosen a career in care rather than chasing money. He listened intently, his expression never mocking, never dismissive. There was something in his gaze that made her feel seen, truly seen, in a way she had not experienced before. When they reached her apartment building, she paused at the entrance. "Well, this is me. Not much, but it is home." He looked at the small, slightly worn building and then back at her. Home is not about size. It is about who waits inside. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of snow drifting down. Emily pulled the scarf tighter around her neck, the same scarf she had wrapped around him in the storm. Noticing it, his eyes softened. "That scarf," he murmured. "You gave it to me that night. I kept it." Emily blinked in surprise. "You? Kept it?" He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the very same scarf. Folded neatly, still faintly carrying her scent of lavender soap. He held it out to her with quiet reverence. "I could not bring myself to throw it away," he said. "It reminded me that someone cared enough to stop. Someone believed my life was worth saving." Emily's throat tightened. She took the scarf back slowly, her fingers brushing his. "It was just a scarf," she whispered. "No," he said firmly. "It was more than that. It was hope." Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the world around them seemed to still. The sound of cars, the distant hum of the city, even the cold air, all faded into the background. Finally, Emily broke the moment with a nervous laugh. Well, do not get sentimental on me now. It is late. You should head home. Oh, he nodded, though there was something unreadable in his gaze, as if he wanted to say more. Instead, he simply whispered, "Good night, Emily." She watched him walk away, the scarf clutched tightly in her hands. Something was happening, something she could not quite explain. And though she told herself it was foolish, her heart already knew this man was no ordinary stranger. What she did not realize was that their growing bond was only the beginning. And soon, secrets too heavy to ignore would threaten to shatter the fragile trust forming between them. The days that followed brought a strange new rhythm into Emily's life. Between long shifts at the hospital, she found herself looking forward to the unexpected moments when he would appear. Sometimes it was outside the hospital, offering to walk her home. Sometimes it was at the coffee shop across the street, waiting with 2 steaming cups. His presence was steady, almost comforting, though always cloaked in mystery. But others around her began to notice. One evening, as Emily changed out of her scrubs in the staff room, her colleague Sarah leaned against the lockers, arms crossed and eyebrows raised. "So, who is he?" Emily froze, tugging at the zipper of her coat. "Who is who?" "Do not play innocent, the tall guy. The one who waits for you outside almost every night. Expensive coat, polished shoes, like he walked out of a magazine." "He is not exactly subtle." Emily's cheeks warmed. "He is just a friend. I helped him during the storm." Sarah tilted her head, unconvinced. "Emily, I have seen a lot of men come and go through this hospital. But that one? He is different. He does not look like someone who belongs in our little town. Be careful." Emily forced a smile, brushing off the warning. "You are overthinking it." But Sarah's words stayed with her, gnawing at the edges of her thoughts. Later that week, Emily and the man who still had not shared his full name went to a small diner near the hospital. It was nothing fancy, just warm light and the smell of coffee and pancakes in the air. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, talking about ordinary things. But then it happened. The waitress, a young woman barely out of high school, walked by carrying a tray. She stumbled, sending a glass of water tipping dangerously toward the edge. In a flash, he caught it with startling precision, saving the tray from crashing to the floor. His reflexes were sharp, practiced nothing like an ordinary man. The waitress gasped, "Wow, thank you, sir." She glanced at his wrist, and her eyes widened. "Is that a limited edition Patek Philippe?" Emily frowned. "A what?" The girl looked embarrassed, mumbling an apology before hurrying off. Emily turned back to him, her eyes narrowing. "Why do you have a watch like that? And why do you always dodge questions about who you are?" He shifted in his seat, his usual calm faltering. "It is just a watch, nothing important." "Nothing important?" Emily's voice was quiet but firm. "That watch could probably pay my rent for a year." "Who are you, really?" For a moment, his gaze locked with hers, as if he wanted to tell her the truth. But then he looked away, his jaw tightening. "Does it matter?" Emily leaned back, her chest tightening with unease. "Yes, it does." The silence stretched between them, heavier than the storm that had first brought them together. For the first time, Emily felt a flicker of doubt. She had trusted him, allowed him into her life without question. But now, uncertainty gnawed at her heart. As they left the diner, the night air sharp and cold, Emily pulled her coat tighter around herself. She walked a little faster, her steps echoing on the quiet street. He kept pace beside her, but neither of them spoke. What Emily did not know was that the truth was closer than she realized. His carefully guarded identity was beginning to slip. And soon, the world would see him for who he really was. The following week, Emily tried to focus on her patients. But Sarah's warning and the memory of that extravagant watch refused to leave her mind. Each time she looked at him, questions rose like a tide she could not hold back. Who was he, really? Why did he choose to linger in her world when it was clear he belonged to another? One late evening, the hospital corridors echoed with frantic footsteps. A patient had suddenly collapsed near the waiting area, his breathing shallow, his pulse fading. Nurses rushed forward, calling for help. Emily was among them, kneeling beside the man, her hands trembling as she checked for signs of life. "Cardiac arrest," she whispered urgently. We need a crash cart now." Before the equipment could arrive, the man Emily had saved from the storm appeared out of nowhere. He had been waiting in the lobby, quietly reading a newspaper, but now he moved with a swiftness and authority that stunned everyone. "Move!" he commanded, his voice steady, filled with the kind of confidence that silenced hesitation. Emily froze for a second as he dropped to his knees beside her, unbuttoning his coat and rolling up his sleeves. His hands pressed firmly against the patient's chest, delivering powerful compressions with the precision that spoke of training serious, professional training. "Keep the airway open," he instructed Emily without looking up. She obeyed automatically, shocked at how seamlessly he took control. His rhythm never faltered, his focus absolute. When the defibrillator arrived, he grabbed the paddles, his voice ringing out, "Charging! Clear!" Electricity surged through the patient's body, making him jolt violently. Emily's breath caught as the heart monitor beeped once, then again, steady and strong. The patient coughed, his chest rising with a gasp of air. Life had returned. The room erupted with relieved murmurs, but Emily could only stare at the man kneeling beside her. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, his composure unshaken, as though saving lives was second nature to him. "Who are you?" she whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them. He looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the briefest moment his eyes betrayed something, a weight, a secret, a past that did not belong to the quiet, anonymous man he pretended to be. But instead of answering, he simply stood, adjusted his coat, and muttered, "Anyone would have done the same." Then he turned and walked toward the door. Emily's heart raced. Anyone? No, not anyone could do what he had just done. His precision, his calm, the way he commanded the room, it all screamed of a life far removed from hers. A life filled with influence, education, and power. As the patient stabilized, Sarah caught Emily's eye from across the hall. Her expression was sharp, almost accusing, as if to say, "I told you so." Emily swallowed hard, torn between admiration and suspicion. She wanted to believe he was simply a man grateful for the kindness she had shown him. But the pieces no longer fit. His clothes, his watch, his knowledge, his reflexes, everything pointed to a truth he was determined to hide. And yet, beneath her unease, there was another feeling growing stronger each day, a pull she could not deny. What Emily did not know was that this moment, this second act of rescue, was pushing her closer to a revelation that would change everything she thought she knew about the man she had saved in the storm. 2 days after the dramatic rescue in the hospital lobby, Emily walked into the break room with a cup of lukewarm coffee in her hands. The television mounted on the wall played softly in the background. She barely paid attention until the newscaster's words froze her mid-step. Seen leaving the hospital after reportedly saving a man's life during a medical emergency. Witnesses confirmed that the individual was none other than Alexander Ward, the reclusive millionaire and CEO of Ward Enterprises. Emily's coffee nearly slipped from her hands. She turned to the screen, her heart hammering in her chest. The image was unmistakable. There he was, in a grainy video clip, kneeling on the hospital floor, performing chest compressions. The camera caught his face clearly. The man she had pulled from the snowstorm was not a simple stranger. He was Alexander Ward, one of the most influential businessmen in the state. Her breath caught as the reporter continued. "Known for his private lifestyle and reluctance to appear in public, Mr. Ward has been thrust back into the spotlight, raising questions about why he was in this small town during last week's snowstorm. Ward Enterprises has yet to release an official statement." Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She remembered his careful silences, the way he had dodged her questions, the expensive watch he had brushed off as meaningless. It all made sense now. He had never been just an ordinary man. The door opened behind her, and she spun around. He was there. Alexander, no, not just Alexander, but Alexander Ward. His eyes searched hers, filled with unspoken apologies. "You lied to me," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "I never lied," he said quietly. "I just did not tell you everything." Her chest tightened. "You let me believe you were someone else. Someone normal. Do you know how humiliating this feels? Everyone on that news channel knows more about you than I do." He stepped closer, his voice urgent. "Emily, please. I wanted you to see me as a man, not a name, not a fortune. Just me." She shook her head, fighting the sting of tears. You should have trusted me with the truth. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Emily turned away, her heart breaking under the weight of betrayal. The man she had saved in the storm, the man who had listened to her stories and held her scarf like a treasure, was not who she thought he was. For the first time since their paths had crossed, Emily walked away from him not as his rescuer, not as his confidant, but as a woman who no longer knew if she could trust him. Emily avoided him for days. At the hospital, she buried herself in work, slipping through hallways and ducking into patient rooms whenever she caught a glimpse of him waiting in the lobby. Her chest tightened each time she saw the shadow of his tall figure, his eyes searching for her. But she could not bring herself to face him. Not yet. One evening, as she stepped outside after her shift, the winter air biting against her cheeks, she found him leaning against the railing once more. This time, she turned to walk the other way, but his voice carried across the quiet street. Emily, please, just hear me out. She stopped, her shoulders stiff. Slowly, she turned, her eyes flashing with hurt. Why should I? You had every chance to tell me who you really were. Instead, you let me stand there, pouring out my life to a stranger who was living a lie. Alexander stepped forward, his breath fogging in the cold air. It was never a lie. Everything I said to you, everything I felt, it was real. The only thing I hid was my name, because I wanted you to see me, not the headlines. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Do you think that makes it better? Do you know what it feels like to realize that everyone else knew the truth before I did? That I was the last to know? He winced, the words cutting deeper than he expected. I wanted to tell you. Every time I looked at you, I wanted to. But I was terrified that the moment you knew, you would treat me differently. Emily shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You do not understand. Trust is everything to me. And now, I do not know if I can believe a single word you say. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed suspended, the snow drifting silently around them. Finally, she whispered, her voice breaking, I cannot do this, Alexander. I cannot be the woman who questions every word, every gesture, wondering if it is real or if it is just another secret you are keeping. He reached out, desperate, but she stepped back. Please, Emily, give me a chance to prove to you. She cut him off, her voice firm even as it trembled. No, I do not want your money. I do not want your power. I just wanted honesty. And you could not give me that. Her words hung in the freezing air, final and unforgiving. Emily turned and walked away, her footsteps crunching in the snow, leaving Alexander standing alone beneath the dim glow of the streetlight. For the first time in years, the man who had everything felt utterly powerless. A week passed in silence. Emily went about her days, hiding behind her duties, pretending her heart was not breaking. Yet every night, when she lay awake in her small apartment, she could not push away the memory of his voice, the look in his eyes when she walked away. One stormy evening, as she was preparing to leave the hospital, shouting erupted down the corridor. A patient in the psychiatric wing had become violent, overturning equipment and lashing out at the staff. Panic rippled through the hall as nurses struggled to hold him back. Emily, caught in the chaos, tried to help restrain the patient, but in the struggle, his arm swung wildly, knocking her to the ground. Pain shot through her side as the crowd pressed in. Fear flashed across her face. And then, he was there. Alexander pushed through the panicked staff, his coat discarded, his voice steady and commanding. He caught the patient's wrist mid-swing, holding firm without cruelty. Easy, he said calmly, his tone low and powerful. No one is here to hurt you. Something in his presence stilled the chaos. With the help of the nurses, Alexander guided the patient gently back to the bed, speaking to him with a patience that surprised everyone watching. Slowly, the storm passed, leaving only silence and heavy breathing in its wake. Emily sat frozen on the floor, staring up at him. Her chest ached, not just from the fall, but from the sight before her. This was not a man hiding behind a fortune. This was a man who acted, who protected, who cared. He knelt beside her, his voice rough with concern. Are you hurt? Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from realization. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep risking yourself for people you do not even know? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out, a familiar scarf, folded neatly. He held it out to her, his eyes steady. Because someone once wrapped me in this scarf, and reminded me that my life mattered, that kindness is worth more than all the money in the world. Emily's breath caught as she took the scarf back, her hands trembling. He continued, his voice breaking with raw sincerity. I cannot change the way I entered your life. I cannot undo the secrets I kept. But I can promise you this. From now on, everything I give you will be the truth. No walls, no masks, just me. For a moment, Emily could only stare at him. Then, slowly, she smiled through her tears. That is all I ever wanted. He extended his hand, not as Alexander Ward the millionaire, but as the man she had saved in the snow. Emily placed her hand in his, and in that touch, all the walls between them fell away. As they stepped out of the hospital together, the storm outside had finally cleared. The snow glistened under the streetlights, a quiet reminder of the night their story had begun. And this time, they walked side by side, unafraid of the world, ready to face it together.